guys doing?
I'm David Benioff.
And I'm Dan Weiss. We're the writer-producers of Game of Thrones, and we're very, very proud to be able to introduce the members of this year's 2013 Comic-Con panel.
First up is the very first actor we cast on the show. The rumors about his vicious temper are completely untrue. The kindest, bravest, warmest, most honorable man I know, Peter Dinklage.
On her honor as a Tully, on her honor as a Stark. If you steal her last cigarette, she will cut your wife's throat. Michelle Fairley!
The Wizard of Withenshaw, John Bradley.
Half our visual effects budget goes towards disguising his hideous ugliness. But here he is in all his freakish glory, Kit Harrington.
Of the Ginger Liberation Front, Rose Leslie.
He may no longer be the King in the North, but he will always be 2010's best dressed man in Scotland, Richard Madden.
To all the bullies from the St. Edward's School, and we do know your names, it may have taken her 10 years, but the Mother of Dragons is coming for you. Emilia Clarke.
He may be the Shakespeare of the Seven Kingdoms, he may be the reason we're all here today, but he is not your bitch. George R.R. Martin.
And finally, our moderator today, the man with the best hair in show business, Elvis Mitchell.
I'm sorry about the sunglasses, but I was just so touched by that incredible in memoriam opening. You know, the one thing that is missing from Game of Thrones is Boys to Men. Why did you wait to break the brothers out here in San Diego? Is my first question to you guys. My actual first question is, George, you heartless bastard. I understand that you tell your wife, whenever she asks about her favorite character, you say, that person isn't going to die, but you don't really mean it. Is that true?
Well, I shouldn't really talk about that, but I have many characters, so killing a few, there's always more. I'm creating new characters. There's jobs, opportunities for actors and actresses. And I should say in my defense is that David and Dan have turned everything up to 11 from the books. They've killed many characters who are still alive in the books, so I'll only take some of the bloodthirsty blame here.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, when you guys brought in Talisa, it made me think, well, maybe they're not going to kill Rob. Maybe he's going to live. Maybe you're going to put a spin. Was that like a deliberate mislead to give him a different wife than the books?
Well, it appears to have worked for you, so that's good. No, I mean, it was, we always knew that they were all going to die. It was a part of the blueprint.
That was a rough day on set, though. I remember when we wrapped the Red Wedding, I remember hugging Michelle and Richard. It's you know, they're playing fictional characters, but it's the last time we're going to work with them. Well, you know,
Ever, really.
Ever.
Never again.
And we have a tough crew. Like, we work in Belfast. We have a tough crew of Northern Irish, and they were crying. You know, the crew was crying on set, which I'd never seen before. And it's such a testament to Michelle and Richard and Una and everyone else, and the performances they gave, that these fictional deaths had people on set who knew what was coming. They all knew it was coming. Had them in tears. So, thank you.
Yeah, Richard, I understand you were crying on the flight home after the day's shoot. Is that true?
Yeah, I cried quite a lot, actually. Yeah, I had a good cry on set with a few other people, and then, yeah, it was the rap party that night, actually, wasn't it? And I just got straight on the plane. I didn't want to be there, really, and did just sit and cry all the way home beside rows of people looking at me as if I was crazy and ordering multiple drinks on a 1-hour flight. But it was worth a cry. I mean, there was so many kind of years since we'd started the pilot, and some amazing friendships. So, you know, it was a character thing, but it was also just an actor thing. I had very great friends, and that I'm sad to not be seeing now. It's July, and I kind of feel like, oh, I should be doing something. I don't know what it is, and then I realize, oh God, I'm supposed to be doing Game of Thrones. So I'm missing that a lot.
Well, Michelle, were you reading the books as you guys were shooting, or did you read ahead to get in that place for the character?
No, I read per series, actually. So it's series 1, you read book 1, series 2, book 2, series 3. I mean, I knew how many years I signed for, so I knew what was coming. And also, David and Dan and Brian don't always stick to the book. So, you know, you read the book, and it's a great sort of reference to have. But your script is your Bible, and that's what you work on. So.
Do you encourage them to read the books, or what do you think, guys?
George or us?
You.
Whatever they want. Everyone's got different things. Some actors like to read ahead, and some really want to be surprised and not know where they're going, because I think there's a fear that if you know where your character goes 4 seasons from now, you're kind of playing that ahead of time. So we completely leave it up to the actors.
Peter, does that work for you to get too far ahead, or do you like to sort of stick with it, or?
In 4 or 5 years, when this is all over, I think I'm going to go back and read all the books to have a little perspective on it. But no, I don't want to know what's coming. I want to know what has happened,
right,
but I don't want to know what's coming. So I stay away from reading too far into the future.
It helps you to not know.
Yeah, yeah.
You become a dragon.
See, I would breathe fire in every scene if I knew that. And I can.
I think they like you. Well, Rose and Kit, since you guys are together, let me tell you, I think one of the most interesting, emotional, and kind of funny scenes is the last episode in which you're giving him a fond goodbye.
Yes.
Like
he deserved it. He ran away.
But that was an incredible scene. There's actually so much going on, and there's really even not that much dialogue in it. Talk about playing that scene, about how you guys figure out how to get that emotion across.
I don't know, it was one of those scenes you got through and I immediately rang you, I think. And was like, have you read that scene? Because it's beautiful, it's beautifully written. And it's one of those things in this show, and as actors in this show, and this, I really hate blowing smoke up David and Dan's arse. I've done it too many times, but they're very good at writing dialogue, and it's very easy to deliver because of that fact. I don't know, I had a lot of fun filming it. And it shouldn't have been a fun scene, but some of the most brutal scenes are the funnest to film, I guess.
Was it fun for you too, Rose?
It was fun, but I think I was very much wrapped up in the fact that, you know, she's incredibly devastated by the fact that Jon Snow has left her, and certainly, I mean, Kit and I had several conversations about the fact that, you know, these two characters are madly in love with one another, and from Ygritte's perspective, she was convinced that Jon was now going to be part of the Wildling tribe and they were going to be a team together, so...
Right now when she keeps him from being killed in the previous episode, she's still, with the evidence in front of her,
yes,
is forcing herself to believe this cannot possibly be true.
Yes, totally, and I think it's that devastation, the fact that he has betrayed her, and certainly in episode 9 when he does ride away on the horse, it's horrible that there's that realization and it hits her there and then, and she's like, he's not going to get away with this. I'm going to hunt him down and hurt him.
That's just it, because that's right, you don't kill him. You do what women do. You shoot him in the back with arrows.
Yeah, us women, we do it very well.
So I hear. I don't have any real evidence of that. Emilia, first of all, congratulations on the Daenerys show. Tell us about getting the news, and please speak English for us, for those of us who don't understand.
I was going to just kind of, do it in Valerian, but I'll do it in English. I was the night before with Miss Rose Leslie, hoping that David and Dan and that the show would get some kind of a recognition, and never in a million years assumed that I would... Yes, and bizarrely my alarm went off really, really early at 6 AM in the hotel. I never set it, and so whilst trying to find things to throw at the alarm to turn it off, I saw there was getting a missed call from someone from HBO to tell us about the amazing news, and it took them about 3 phone calls to kind of say, no, and you yourself as well. Didn't kind of register at all.
Well, it must have been, because you had such a great season this year. Your last scene of the season is so good. I mean, you really do own that. And it's just seeing what she's gone through the season, just seeing her reclaim being Dany again at the end of the season. That was such a great note to go out on, a great way to play it too. Talk about finding the character then and what you've gone through this season.
Yeah, it has been a phenomenal season. It was a phenomenal season to film. It was amazing getting to go on the journey that she kind of, you think that she's peaking in episode 5 with the getting her army, and then the final episode was absolutely exhilarating to film, really amazing. David Nutter is an absolute genius, and I remember kind of going in and them sort of lifting me up and just naturally breaking into this grin, and that was what they went for. So.
Well, since I'm graduating for Emmys, you guys got the writing nomination for what's now been known colloquially as I think it's called the Red Wedding episode. Which just strikes me as when I met you guys and talked about this, you were kind of dreading pulling that off. Talk about...
I'm not dead, Judge.
shirtless.
Sun and stars.
I see dead people. Anyway. No, talk about that episode, because it's such a beautiful piece of writing, and again, there's so much that's not said. There's so much subtext.
I would say that was one. I mean, that so much of that is to the man sitting at the other end of the table. When we read the books in 2006, was it 2006? We knew immediately that if we can make it, if we can make this happen, and we can get this to that place, we can get to that scene and do justice to the holy shit of that moment, and to throw the book across the room of that moment. We can get people to throw remote controls the way I threw my book, that we would have done something right. And so yeah, it was exciting and it was terrifying, because it's such a difficult scene to pull off. And just going back to the David Nutter of it all, the director of the episode, is just such a legend and a genius, and so much of the success of that episode is down to him, and of course to the people sitting to my left on this panel.
Talk about that a little bit, David, just about your own trepidations about the episode.
Well, we've been waiting for it for so long, and you know, all the readers of the books have been waiting for it for so long, and I think 4 years ago we said something like, if we can just get to the Red Wedding, we can die happy. And then we didn't even want to say the words Red Wedding anymore, because just that phrase became kind of a spoiler, so it was the scene that will not be mentioned. And I just remember standing on set and watching Michelle have to do these takes over and over again. And as you say, so much of it is about the faces of the characters, and so little to do with the dialogue. And just the face that Michelle makes when she pulls up Roose Bolton's sleeve and sees the chainmail, or the face, you know, the look on her face right before she cuts the Walder Frey's wife's throat, and that howl, just that kind of howl of rage and grief, and then have to do that howl 20 times or something. It was such a phenomenal performance, and Richard, the two of them, it was insane. I mean, we've been waiting for it for so long and dreading it, and then to have it turn out better than we could have imagined, mainly because of these actors here, was just, you know, one of the great moments of my life.
Michelle and Richard are good. They really are.
That's right, because Michelle, in that moment, just before you touch his hand and push up the sleeve, there's so much pride and tenderness in that moment. I mean, this is a big moment. This is a life-changing moment, obviously, but just that you didn't choose to play as a big shot, but like some part of you knew this was coming. Talk about finding that part of the character.
Well, it's a very gradual thing, actually, and you base it. You have to. It's like a piece of music. You have to work your way through it, and you don't want to overplay too quickly. You want to discover it as you go along, and because I had Richard by my side constantly, who I love and adore and trust, and I had a great script, and David Nutter, and also as well, there was one bit where they actually had the music, and it was something about, there's a key change in the music, and it's literally just, it was like somebody walked over your grave. It literally gave you a chill. And that was the moment that David wanted to, as she observes everyone leaving the room, when the lights, as the people leave, the room darkens, the light goes, the candlesticks go out, so the room gets darker and the door closes, and then the music strikes up. And that's when she initially feels that something is not right.
But it's talk about that too, David, because I just feel like making that also about quiet, because I guess you're reading it, there are kind of thunderstorms going on in your head, but it's just also somber and kind of low-key.
It's one of those moments. I mean, one of the unsung heroes here is our composer, Ramin Djawadi, and it was an argument we've been having for years, because we always knew the Rains of Casca, it had to be familiar. It had to be a song that was in the audience's minds enough so that when the first chords of it come on, like the reaction you're talking about, you'd recognize it and think something's wrong here, because that was the experience reading the book, where they start playing Rains of Castamere and you're thinking, that's not right. But here, you know, for the show, no one's going to actually say they're playing the Rains of Castamere. It all had to be the music. And it was an argument that Dan and I had, because going back, you know, in season 1, and I was thinking, what if it turns out that Rains of Castamere is the show's theme song and that we've heard and become so famous? And Dan said, it's got to be a different song, it's got to be different. Ramin can come up with something else catchy. And thank God Dan won that argument, and Ramin came up with this gorgeous piece of music, and it's just one of those haunting things that you know, it's playing in my head right now, and I think about how much he's contributed to the show. You know, those opening titles and how magnificent that Angus's title sequence and Ramin's theme song, and what would the show be without that? You know, all these people who've given us so much of their brilliance.
Well, I just feel like for you, John, this has been such an interesting season for Sam, because I feel like he's becoming more and more heroic with his new family and everything.
Yes, he is. Yeah, it was an interesting one for Sam, really. I mean, I think Sam's always been a hero. I think that one branch of heroics is to, or one branch of bravery rather, is to stick up for yourself and ward off bad vibes. And but I think it's braver sometimes to absorb punishment and just be the underdog all the time. And I think Sam had a lot of that. But the interesting thing about Sam is, Sam lived in his mind for so long. He's a kind of he's an academic almost, Sam. He absorbs information. He's got an amazing curiosity about how things work.
Yeah, the world's almost abstract for him. This year became concrete, especially with his new family.
Completely, yeah. But the interesting thing I found out about the way this moment came about is the one moment that turns his life completely around, where he becomes the hero, was a moment of complete gut instinct. It wasn't about, I mean, people say that Sam applied this knowledge of dragonglass killing White Walkers. He didn't. His sword had been broken into 1,000 pieces, and he had to find a weapon from somewhere. And it just so happened he looked out and found this thing, the answer to a question that people have been searching for years and years and years. So Sam just needs to get out of his own brain a bit, work on gut instinct, and you find out that when he is placed under enormous pressure and he feels enormous responsibility, he's a bit of a dude.
But it also feels like there's this awakening too with him being with somebody who loves him. I mean, that's as much responsible for the heroism as anything else. We're maturing.
We always found that, I mean, me and Kit spoke about this as well, that Sam had been saved by Jon Snow. I mean, his life had been saved, but also his kind of spirit had been saved. When Sam thinks that there is no good left in the world, he's defended by this guy. And we always saw Sam and Gilly's story as Sam taking that baton from Jon. And he's been imbued with these characteristics of he wants to be a saviour as well, because he knows how much that kind of relationship can inspire people and how much it can mean to people.
Well, I just feel that for me, the big moment from the season is when Gilly says the baby's name's Sam. He sort of stands up straight. It's a really beautiful beat.
Yeah, and I think that with Sam being a father figure, his kind of experience of father figures isn't one that you'd really recommend. That's not going to be a bestseller. But I think that it's a kind of one Sam has been almost destroyed spiritually by bad parenthood, and he wants to make sure that this one isn't.
It's interesting because you're sitting next to the kid. I mean, you think about all the father figures that John has had over the years. These sort of these guys who have not been particularly. I mean, he's almost like a charisma junkie. He's like drawn to any guy who is bigger than life. Would you say that's part of the case for John?
Yeah, I think that there's an equal parts John's trying to find a paternal figure, which is odd because you'd think he'd be trying to find a maternal figure, but he's always drawn to these kind of these strong-willed men, and they find him appealing. They want to kind of nurture him and sort of raise him into their form, as it were. So he goes from his father to Benjen to Commander Mormont, Corin Harfan, then Mance Rayder. And I think what's interesting about what's coming up is he gets sick of that and he turns into that person, I think. So I don't know, it's going to be an interesting season to play, the one coming up, I think.
Sure, well, I just found on watching all the 3 seasons just to get ready for this again, that they're all looking for families. I mean, for me, the moment for you, Rose, this season is not when you're naked, although that's not so bad, but when you're most vulnerable and most naked is that moment where you're trying to stand up for John and everybody's telling you. I mean, I really saw basically through to her soul.
Yes, I mean, it's going against her gut instinct, and the wildling life is the only life, obviously, that she's only ever known. And then suddenly here comes along Jon Snow, a man who, I mean, she doesn't really understand at the beginning, and he's totally just flipped all her values. I mean, and suddenly she finds herself sticking up for somebody who doesn't quite follow the same route as her, who doesn't have the same beliefs, but yet, I mean, the love that she has for him totally dominated.
But she's completely vulnerable at that moment. I mean, that's one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen on television, when she's being pulled away and she refuses to lose her ground. I can't say stand your ground as a black person in America, obviously. But thank you. But when she sort of says, "This is who I am," that's a real stand. And that's a beautiful moment, the way you played it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was that was an amazing day, and it's once again going straight back to the writing. It's that David and Dan, they write so beautifully and so intelligently that it is an utter privilege and joy to be an actor on this show, because it is amazing to portray. I mean, the scenes that they write are fantastic.
Well, Peter, I gotta say, I have so much fun watching all the stuff you do with Charles Dance. I mean, talk about father figures and fathers who aren't quite fathers, and your whole arc this season has kind of been about fatherhood, defining your relationship with your father versus the idea of becoming a father yourself. I mean, sort of making that next step in the marriage. And Tyrion's ambivalence has been really interesting to watch this season.
Thanks. Of course, it says so much about an actor when you can't imagine any other actor playing that role, and Charles Dance is that for me with Tywin Lannister. Every time we have one of those scenes, Charles gives me a nice little shoulder rub after each take. Make sure we still love one another as fellow thespians. Because it gets, they're beautifully written scenes, and I find those scenes fascinating because he's so frustrated with Tyrion, because his 3 children, Jaime, Cersei, and myself, are sort of 3 different parts of a whole. Then they're not in the right holes. They're not in the right person. They each lack what the other has.
But they're so aware of their failings. I mean, Tyrion seems to be basically sort of self-destructive because he knows exactly the ways in which he's wrong.
Yeah, and he can get away with it too because he has this freedom in terms of financial freedom and all of that. And, he has a bit of freedom in terms of threatening Joffrey a bit. He's a bit, make your move sort of guy. Because he also knows that his father, who is the true, let's face it, ruler, feels the same way about Joffrey that I do. He just doesn't say it.
But I just thought, again, these great family scenes, you're talking with Cersei about Joffrey and about happiness. And she says, well, I guess there was a time I really was happy. And you seem to be as shocked by it as anything else. I mean, it's, again, you're playing the silences there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks. You're only as good as the actors you work with, and I'm lucky to be working with some really good ones.
Now, George, I have to ask, is it true that since you said last year, you wouldn't be in any country with a television when the Red Wedding episode played if you managed to stay away from TV during that week.
No, I discovered that there are no countries without television. I mean, in the last year, the books have sold in Mongolia, Iran, Vietnam, you know, so I decided there was no escaping it. Iceland, we added Iceland, we have all of Scandinavia now, so I figured I might as well just bunker down in Santa Fe and withstand the storm, and I managed to survive it. I had more experience because I went through a smaller precursor storm 13 years ago when people were throwing the books into the fireplace and saying they would never read another word of mine again, and they would go out the next week and buy another copy of the book. I like that. Thankfully, no one, to my knowledge, threw their television set into the fireplace.
Well, I gotta ask you guys, since we're now talking about this episode, the fact that somehow people manage to sort of keep cool and keep quiet about this. I mean, this seems to be this incredible compact between the people who read the book, because when I met you, I almost brought it up, but I was afraid to ask you about it. What do you attribute that to?
I honestly don't know, but I'm so grateful for it. I mean, I think you go to any of the fan sites and there's this kind of incredible self-policing that people do, where people are shouted down if they start spoiling anything, and the sites are very carefully monitored so that the experience isn't ruined for people who are coming to it fresh, and we're just incredibly grateful for it. You know, there's always going to be a couple of douches on message boards who just want to tell you what happens to, you know, whatever character, but for the most part, I mean, the self-control that so many people knew about this, that millions of people knew about the Red Wedding before it aired, and yet so much of the audience was in the dark is just makes us really grateful to those people.
I just think it's because you guys are a smart, respectful, and incredibly attractive group of people.
And suddenly we're at the shameless panel, but but it's an incredible thing to watch, because I was assuming that was going to happen one way or another. Were you shocked by that as well? Yeah? That people kept quiet about things?
Well, no, I mean, because we've had so many, I feel like for us, the first season was sort of the test case. He agrees. And whether or not people were going to spill the beans on what happened to Ned Stark, that would let us know what we were, you know, what we were looking at, what we were facing. And the fact that so many people managed to keep quiet about such a monumental event in the story.
Except for my mom.
Except for David's mom, who would walk up and down the lines at the bookstore telling everybody, you know, did you know Ned Stark dies? Yeah, I feel like after the fan base as a whole had managed to keep quiet about that, I realized we had a good group.
Well, one of the things, and I've talked to you guys about this before, this kind of thing that runs throughout is just the way the characters deal with fear. And Emilia, for you this season, I mean, I always thought that sort of Danny might kind of conquer that, and her fear and her self-doubt start to kind of rot away at her this season in a way that I thought was really kind of striking. And I want you to talk a little bit about finding a way to play all of that. Just her loss of sort of confidence after a while.
Yeah, well, I mean, coming out of season 2, her kind of self-belief and confidence in herself and in others was pretty rock bottom. Her ability to trust had been abolished. And then so going into season 3 and kind of ramping up to the scene, she had a lot of self-doubt eating away at her, definitely. And it's kind of, it's taking the plunge, really. It was a sort of it was the first time that she didn't discuss anything with her closest advisors. It wasn't brought up with Sajora. It was entirely a risk she was taking, and the trust that she put was into her dragons, was into.
But it's kind of your Henry V scene. It's kind of your calling your countrymen on scene. And just see the way again she gets that kind of arrogance back throughout the speech.
Confidence, not arrogance.
Forgive my imprecision, I meant confidence. To see the way she just starts to own that. It's almost like she's talking herself into it as she's giving the speech.
Yeah, she's testing herself. It's the biggest risk she's ever taken for every reason. She knows if it doesn't work, then that's it. It's game over. And if it does work, then game on. and amazingly, and it does. And I just think that she just builds from that and continues to kind of. She asks advice less and starts to listen to herself more, which is pretty wonderful to get to play. To sort of think about where she really came from season 1, from the beginning, to that moment.
It just feels like these last 2 episodes have come to define the show in a way I wonder if you guys expected. Not only the Red Wedding, but the following episode. I mean, just because there's so much crammed into it. I'll go with Richard for a second. Just the way you're feeling so much pleasure in that ceremony. I mean, and that, again, it's almost like your character is going to will his way out of this. I was believing it wasn't going to happen. And you have to actually be that guy. You have to play him instead of being invested in the book. Talk about just finding a way to play this moment where he thinks everything is the way he wants it to be. That he's got the woman he loves, and he's even going to like brave exposure and kiss her in front of everybody.
I mean, the whole time doing it I've been trying to not preempt anything. I think we all try and do that and just try and make it as realistic and as honest as we can. And that's something that the books did, that you don't know what turns the character's going to take and how the action's going to change. And I think that's something David and Dan do, and I think that's something all the actors do, which is we commit to decisions, and then you get the script in, and your character's going a completely different way, and you have to force yourself around into going on a different path, and that keeps it exciting. And that's what George did in the book. You never know what's coming next, and so as an actor you have to do that. I think that's what we've all done throughout this show, is you commit to a decision and then you get slammed with a curveball and you take it there, and that's what keeps it honest. And I think Rob Stark's doing the same thing. He's someone that's always committed in the moment and present, and at that stage, by the time that episode 9 starts, there is nothing to say that this isn't going to work out, and he's done everything he possibly can, and it's worked out as best as it could for what's happening, but at the end of the day, he's not been winning. And we get to this stage and you think, right, we're on the home stretch here actually, this is going to be it. We're going to have this amazing battle. I'm going to storm into King's Landing, cut off Joffrey's head. It's going to be a great big victory. We'll have a big party at the end of season 3, do you know? And that's not what happens, and that's definitely not what happened. But I think it's just about being present and current, and that's what the writing does, that's what the actors done, that's what George does. So it's all about being honest all the time, and when we do that, we end up achieving things that are quite interesting for an audience, I think.
Wow. I think there may be a couple of audience questions. I might be mistaken about this. Audience questions. Where are we? Where's the mic? Where are you? Ah, yes, sir.
I want to start by saying, that Game of Thrones is the greatest show ever. Now, I know that Emilia has said she has read all of the books, and it's evident in how awesomely she portrays the mother of dragons, but my question is directed more to my favorite character, Tyrion, to Peter Dinklage, and as well as the rest of the cast. What's it like working on such diverse and beautiful sets with such incredibly brilliant writers, George, David, and Dan?
It's amazing. I get to be on t-shirts. The funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other day, because of this show, we get to travel to the most amazing places. I mean, in Dubrovnik there, where that scene takes place, we're going to go back there for about 3 weeks this year. And I'd never heard of Dubrovnik before this show, and now it's one of my favorite places on this world of ours. And but I haven't taken a proper vacation in I don't know how long. because we get to go to these places, we work our asses off, but my job allows me to go to the most beautiful places in the world, so it's incredible.
Yes, sir. Next question.
Hi. This question's directed towards George. As a fan of the show, I know at some point it's going to end. The books are going to be done, thus the show is going to be done. And, well, I don't think any of us here want to see that. So my question is, would you ever consider doing a prequel series, maybe 1 or 2 books, illustrating the fall of the Targaryens, the rise of Baratheon, that sort of stuff. The main thing is that Ned Stark will be back, and thus Sean Bean won't be dying in something finally. So I think it's something the world kind of wants to see.
Well, first I have to finish The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. That's going to take me a while, and you know, I have to write quickly here because David and Dan and these guys are catching up to me, and I can, you know, the locomotive is coming down the tracks behind me, and I'm still laying the tracks. But they're not quite on top of me yet, but I can see the smoke in the next hill here, so I'm working on that. And what I'm going to write after that, would I write other stories set in Westeros and the world? Yeah, I might. I don't think, however, it would be a prequel about Robert's Rebellion. I mean, that material is being revealed through flashbacks and through revelations in the course of the present series, so by the time I'm finished these last 2 books, I think you'll know everything about that. You'll have known all the twists and turns and the betrayals, and the mysteries will be solved. So writing a book about that would just be kind of connecting the dots without any surprises. But I might go back earlier and write something about Aegon and his sisters, or the Mad King, or Aegon the Unworthy, a true scumbag of a king with his 9 mistresses and so forth. So there's lots of material to write about if I want to do more in Westeros. I just don't think I'll do the immediate precursor. So I'm sorry about that, but no offense to Sean Bean. You know, it is always sad to see Sean die. He's a brilliant actor, but he does die so well, so very well.
I'm Emily, and this question goes to... Hi. This question goes to the Khaleesi herself. So often, we are shown female characters who are portrayed as weak because of their femininity. And one of the brilliant things about Game of Thrones is that all these women have such depth and strength. And your journey in particular has such complexity and strength, but also compassion, which as an aspiring actress is really empowering, so thank you for that. But my question to you is, what is it like to be such an icon of female power? And would you maybe...
You okay? I can't hear you, I'm sorry. Can you might cut out, can you answer?
Getting to play Daenerys is the most glorious experience as an actor. I couldn't have dreamed going to drama school that I would ever get to play such a wonderful, strong woman. And reading the scripts and seeing her journey is a phenomenal experience. And as a young girl myself, I think it sort of empowers me as a woman. So it's getting to play that is incredible. George having written her and David and Dan having written her to absolute perfection. So it's quite an experience, and to have even the remotest possibility that I've helped to make other women feel empowered is just the most wonderful feeling I could possibly imagine. So I'm just incredibly grateful, really.
Hello? Hi. So I'm a huge fan of the series, and I was, before this, a huge fan of the Harry Potter series. And so with that in mind, I was wondering if any of the actors have a relationship like J.K. Rowling and Alan Rickman, where George has told you guys about what's gonna happen in the future with your characters.
No.
As in, who gets to win?
Well, just anything to do with the future books, it seems like that answer is no.
Some of the actors don't want to know, and some of the actors do want to know. So when occasionally I visit the set and someone asks me, I'll tell them. But some of them really prefer not to know and to just read a script at a time. And of course, there is the factor that, you know, that things change. This is an adaptation process going on. So the books are the books and the show is the show. And although I think the show is a very faithful adaptation, it's not identical, there are changes. So some of the actors finding out what happens in the books to their character doesn't necessarily mean the same thing is going to happen in the scripts to the character.
And I guess we are out of time, so it's now time. I'm sorry. I think the show's coming back next season, right? Good. Let's thank the creators and the creator.